has ever inspired. Witnesses say the tension was already in the air before the drinks even started flowing. Rasheeda walked in confident, dressed to impress, clearly ready to support Spice and enjoy the night. But Kirk? His energy was different. Cold, distant, almost like he had something planned. And when the moment finally came, no one in that room was ready for it. In front of a crowd packed with friends, cast members, and influencers, Kirk allegedly said something so disrespectful, so unexpected, that the entire party went silent. Conversations stopped. Phones came out. Faces dropped. Fans are shocked as reports claim Rasheeda stood frozen, trying to process the humiliation happening right in front of her. Was this a long brewing argument that finally exploded? Or did Kirk cross a line that can never be uncrossed? Emotions ran high as guests began choosing sides, whispers spreading across the room like wildfire. Some tried to step in, others simply watched, unable to believe what they were witnessing. And just when you think it could not get worse, sources say this was only the beginning of a night that would leave the family divided and fans demanding answers. The moment Kirk Frost stepped deeper into the glow of Spice's party, something shifted in the room that no one could quite explain. The music was loud, the laughter was real, cameras flashing from every angle, but there was a tension that crept in quietly, like a storm forming behind a clear sky. Rasheeda was already surrounded by a small circle of friends, smiling, greeting guests, playing her role with the grace everyone had come to expect. She looked composed, confident, completely unaware that the night was about to take a turn that would leave her questioning everything. Across the room, Kirk Frost stood near the bar, holding a drink he barely touched. His eyes kept drifting toward Rasheeda, but there was no warmth in his expression. It was distant, almost calculating. A few guests noticed it right away, whispering to each other that something felt off. Kirk was not his usual self. He was not laughing, not engaging, not even pretending to enjoy the celebration. Instead, he watched, as if he was waiting for the exact right moment to make his move. Why he looked like that? One guest whispered under her breath, glancing between Kirk and Rasheeda. I don't know, but something about to happen, another replied, already pulling out her phone. The energy grew heavier as more people started noticing. Even Spice herself caught a glimpse of Kirk's expression from across the room, her smile faltering for just a second before she quickly recovered. She had thrown this party to celebrate her success, to bring everyone together, not to host drama. But deep down, she knew this crowd, and she knew how quickly things could spiral. Rasheeda, still unaware, made her way toward the bar, greeting people along the way. When she finally reached Kirk, she smiled naturally, leaning in slightly as if expecting a normal conversation. "You good?" she asked softly, her voice calm but curious. Kirk did not return the smile. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink, eyes locked on hers in a way that immediately made her uncomfortable. "Yeah, I'm good," he replied, but his tone told a completely different story. There was a pause. A long, awkward pause that felt out of place in a room full of noise and movement. Rasheeda shifted slightly, trying to read him, trying to understand what was going on. "You sure?" she pressed gently, her smile starting to fade. Kirk let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. It was sharp, almost dismissive. "I mean, depends on what you think good is," he said, his voice just loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear. A couple of heads turned. Conversations nearby slowed. People could sense the shift, the beginning of something that was not going to stay private for long. Rasheeda blinked, caught off guard. "What's that supposed to mean?" Kirk leaned back slightly, his posture changing as if he had finally decided it was time. "It means I'm tired of pretending everything perfect when it's not." The words hit differently. They were not loud, but they carried. Within seconds, more people were paying attention, pretending not to listen while clearly listening to every word. "Kirk, not here," Rasheeda said quickly, lowering her voice, her eyes darting around the room. But Kirk did not lower his voice. If anything, he raised it just enough to make sure more people could hear. "Nah, why not here?" he shot back. You always want to talk behind closed doors, keep everything looking good for everybody else. I'm done with that. The music kept playing, but it felt distant now. The laughter had faded into whispers. Phones were no longer being hidden. They were out in the open. Rasheeda's face tightened. She could feel the eyes on her, the judgment, the curiosity. This was not just a conversation anymore. This was a scene. You embarrassing me, she said under her breath, trying to keep her composure. Kirk shook his head slowly. Nah, you embarrassing yourself. You just don't see it yet. That line landed hard. A few gasps could be heard from the surrounding crowd. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh no, he really doing this right now?" Rasheeda took a step back, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. What are you talking about? Kirk stepped forward, closing the distance again, his voice steady but cutting. I'm talking about all the stuff you think people don't notice. The way you move, the way you act like everything's sweet when it's not. Kirk, stop, she said, her voice firmer now, but there was a crack in it. This is not the time. But Kirk was not stopping. He had crossed that line, and there was no turning back. No, this is exactly the time, he said. Because you love putting on a show, right? So let's give them a real one. The crowd reacted instantly. Some people stepped closer, others stepped back, but no one left. The tension had turned into full-blown anticipation. Rasheeda's hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. You doing too much. Am I? Kirk replied, raising an eyebrow. Or am I finally saying what everybody else been thinking? That statement sent a ripple through the room. Now it was not just about them. It was about everyone watching. What people? Rasheeda shot back, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. Kirk gestured vaguely around the room. Look around. You think they don't see through all this? A few guests quickly looked away, not wanting to be dragged into the situation. Others stayed frozen, caught between curiosity and discomfort. You lost your mind, Rasheeda said, shaking her head, trying to process what was happening. Nah, Kirk replied quietly, leaning in just enough so only she could hear the next words, but close enough that the intensity was visible to everyone. I just finally stopped playing along. For a brief second, there was silence between them. Heavy, suffocating silence. And in that moment, Rasheeda realized this was not just a random outburst. This was something deeper. Something that had been building. Behind them, Spice watched closely, her expression tense. She whispered to someone beside her, "This is getting out of hand." But before anyone could step in, Kirk straightened up again, his voice rising just enough to pull everyone back in. "You want me to keep going?" he asked, almost daring her. Rasheeda's eyes widened slightly, a mix of anger and fear flashing across her face. "Kirk, don't." But the way he smiled told everyone exactly what was about to happen next, and the room braced itself as the situation moved past the point of no return. The room seemed to hold its breath as Kirk Frost continued, his words slicing through the air like knives. Every guest, from friends to influencers, felt the tension tightening like a vice. Rasheeda, still trying to maintain her composure, took a slow step back, but Kirk mirrored her movement, closing in with a deliberate calm that made the atmosphere electric. "You always play the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect celebrity," he said, voice steady but charged. "But tonight, we see the truth." A murmur ran through the crowd, the whispers spreading like wildfire. Cameras clicked relentlessly, capturing every micro-expression, every flicker of shock and anger on Rasheeda's face. Her friends instinctively gathered closer, but even they seemed powerless to stop the storm building before them. "Kirk, what are you doing?" one of her close friends whispered urgently, her tone sharp with panic. The words barely registered as Kirk raised his hand slightly, emphasizing his next statement. "I'm showing people what I've been seeing for months. What everyone's been seeing," he said, and then the room froze again. The subtle intensity in his gaze made it clear he wasn't bluffing. "You think nobody notices the little things, the whispers, the glances? I notice. I always notice. And tonight, everyone else will too." Rasheeda's lips parted slightly, a mixture of anger and disbelief crossing her face. You embarrassed yourself first, she snapped, her voice louder now, carrying across the room. This isn't about anyone else but you. But Kirk didn't flinch. He leaned closer, speaking with an edge that drew all eyes on them. No, it's about you. It's about the mask you wear for the cameras, for your fans, for everyone who thinks your life is flawless. Tonight, that mask comes off. Gasps echoed across the room. A few of the younger guests exchanged wide-eyed glances, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Some quietly filmed, knowing that this confrontation would go viral, while others shook their heads, shocked by Kirk's boldness. One of Rasheeda's family members whispered nervously, "We need to do something before this gets worse," but before anyone could intervene, Kirk's voice rang out again, deliberate, piercing, and impossible to ignore. "And don't look at me like I'm the villain here. This isn't about me, it's about showing everyone the real Rasheeda." The tension ratcheted higher. Rasheeda's hands clenched into fists at her sides, and for a moment, it seemed like she might lash out physically. Instead, she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, her eyes scanning the room for support. Some guests tried to defuse the situation, softly murmuring, "Let's all just relax. It's a party," but their words were lost in the thick, electric atmosphere. Kirk's presence was dominating, his words cutting through the pretense like a spotlight, exposing every shadow. "You always think you're untouchable," Kirk continued, gesturing toward her with a slow, deliberate motion. "But tonight, even your fans see the cracks. Even your friends can't pretend anymore." Whispers surged through the crowd. "Oh my God," one guest murmured. "Did he just say that?" Someone else added, "I can't believe this is happening in public." The shock was palpable. Everyone knew reality shows thrived on drama, but nothing had prepared them for this level of raw confrontation. Rasheeda's voice trembled slightly as she spoke, trying to regain control. "You don't get to humiliate me in front of everyone," she said, eyes locking on Kirk. "This is childish and disrespectful." Kirk smirked faintly, almost a predator in his element, and shook his head. "Disrespectful? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely." The phrase lingered in the air, echoing in the minds of every guest who had witnessed it. The family was left divided, some members frowning, some silent, and a few nodding subtly as if understanding that Kirk's words, no matter how harsh, had hit their mark. Then, in an unexpected twist, Kirk pulled out his phone, showing a message on the screen to the nearest guests. Eyes widened, whispers turned into audible gasps. "Look at this," he said, his tone sharp, carrying across the room. "You think the public doesn't see it? They see everything. I'm just making sure everyone else sees too." The screen displayed private texts and social media posts that painted a picture of what he described as hidden truths, and the room collectively recoiled. Rasheeda's composure faltered, her hands instinctively moving to shield herself from the attention. Some guests murmured sympathetically, while others couldn't hide their fascination. It was spectacle, drama, and humiliation all rolled into one explosive moment. As the confrontation escalated, emotions ran high. Some guests tried to reason with Kirk, saying quietly, "Enough, let's just calm down," but their voices barely registered. Kirk was unstoppable now, riding the wave of tension he had created, each statement sharper and more cutting than the last. Rasheeda's eyes glistened with a mix of hurt and anger. "You're going too far," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Kirk leaned closer, making sure his voice carried the intensity undeniable. "No, this is exactly where I need to be. Right here, right now. Showing everyone the truth." And just when it seemed like the room could not take any more tension, a new twist erupted. One of the guests, a mutual friend, suddenly stepped between them. "Kirk, step back," he shouted, trying to defuse the situation. Kirk paused, a slow smile spreading across his face, but he didn't step back. "No," he said firmly. "This ends tonight, and it ends with everyone seeing everything." The crowd tensed again, the anticipation unbearable. Fans are shocked. Emotions ran high. The room was a powder keg of drama, waiting for the next spark to ignite it completely. Rasheeda, now visibly shaken, attempted to regain control. Fine, she said, her voice stronger now, though the vulnerability was evident. Say what you need to say, but this stops after tonight. You can't keep doing this. Kirk nodded slowly, almost mockingly, and with a final glance around the room, he delivered the line that left everyone speechless. Oh, it's not stopping. Not until the truth comes out and everyone knows the real Rasheeda. The phrase hung in the air, a mixture of revelation and threat, as guests whispered among themselves, unsure if the night could recover from the chaos unfolding before them. Fans are shocked, the family was left divided, and every person in that room realized this party would be talked about for years. The room seemed to pulse with an electric tension that no one could ignore, the kind of tension that makes every heartbeat loud and every whisper feel like a scream. Kirk Frost, now fully in his element, kept his eyes locked on Rasheeda, moving with a deliberate intensity that made it clear he had no intention of stopping. You think this is about a little argument? He asked, voice cutting through the chatter. This is about everything. Every secret, every lie, every moment you pretended to be someone you're not. The crowd reacted immediately. Jaws dropped. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or keep watching the drama unfold. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, the kind that only reality TV-level confrontations can create. Rasheeda, still standing her ground, squared her shoulders. Kirk, don't make this a public spectacle, she said, trying to mask the rising tremor in her voice. If you have an issue, handle it privately. But Kirk wasn't listening. Private? He scoffed, letting his voice rise just enough to ensure everyone heard. I've tried private. I've tried quiet. Tonight, the world gets the truth. And everyone here? You're all witnesses. Whispers and gasps rippled through the guests. Someone muttered, he's really doing this. A few phones quietly recorded the moment, knowing full well this confrontation would be splashed across social media by morning. The tension was almost unbearable as Kirk continued, moving around the room slowly, letting his words sink in. You spend so much time pretending, Rasheeda. Pretending for fans, pretending for friends, pretending for cameras. But not tonight. Tonight, the mask comes off. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some nodding silently in agreement, others shaking their heads. The room had transformed from a lively celebration to a stage for humiliation and revelation, with every eye on the central drama. Rasheeda's voice cracked slightly as she responded, trying to regain control of the narrative. You're overstepping, Kirk. I won't allow you to turn this party into a circus. But Kirk's grin was unshakable. A circus? Maybe. Or maybe it's just reality. People see through the smiles, the photos, the staged moments. Tonight, we all see the truth. He gestured subtly toward the assembled guests, and the silence that followed was deafening. Everyone understood. This wasn't just a spat. This was a full-blown exposé. The intensity escalated further when Kirk revealed something that made even the closest friends lean in. He pulled out his phone again, showing a series of messages and images that had been circulating in private circles. Look at this, he said, letting the screen shine in the dim lighting of the party. This is what people really know, what everyone's been whispering about. The room collectively froze. Some guests gasped audibly, others covered their mouths in shock, and a few of Rasheeda's closest allies exchanged panicked glances. The family was visibly shaken, their faces reflecting a mix of disbelief and concern. Rasheeda's composure faltered for a moment, her hands moving instinctively to cover her face. Kirk, stop. You're crossing a line, she whispered, her voice barely audible but tense. Kirk, sensing the effect of his words, leaned in closer, lowering his voice just enough for her to hear privately yet making the tension in the room even more unbearable. The line was crossed a long time ago, he said calmly, each word dripping with purpose. I'm just showing everyone the cracks they've been ignoring. Guests whispered among themselves, some quietly taking sides, others simply absorbing the spectacle. Oh my God, this is insane, one said under her breath. I can't believe he's doing this here. Phones recorded every movement, every glance, every tremor of emotion. The energy in the room was raw, chaotic, and intoxicating in its intensity. Rasheeda's eyes glistened with a mix of hurt and fury. "You're trying to humiliate me in front of everyone," she said, her voice rising slightly. "This isn't about truth. This is about making me look bad." Kirk shook his head slowly, the faintest smirk appearing on his face. "Humiliate? No. Enlighten. Finally, everyone sees what's been hidden beneath the surface. This isn't just about you, it's about reality." The statement landed like a bombshell. Guests glanced around nervously, some nodding subtly, some recoiling. The divide in the room was palpable. The family was left wondering where loyalty ended and reality began. Then, the unexpected happened. A mutual friend, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension, stepped forward, placing a tentative hand on Kirk's shoulder. "Kirk, enough. This isn't the place," he urged, but Kirk's response was a slow, deliberate shake of the head. "No, this is exactly the place. Everyone here needs to see it. Every single one of you." The crowd stiffened. The friend backed off, realizing there was no reasoning with him tonight. The stage had been set, the players in position, and Kirk was fully in control. Rasheeda, now visibly shaken but determined, tried to regain some authority. "If you keep this up, you'll regret it. I won't let you make me the villain," she said firmly. Kirk's response was almost a whisper, yet loud enough for everyone close to hear. "The villain? No. That title belongs to the one who hides behind smiles and staged moments. Tonight, the mask comes off. And you're the one wearing it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the guests collectively realized that this night would not end quietly. It was a turning point, a dramatic moment etched into everyone's memory, and it had only just begun. The air felt electric, heavy with anticipation and unresolved tension. Kirk's presence dominated the space, each word deliberate, each movement calculated. Rasheeda's friends whispered urgently, debating whether to intervene, while others simply watched, captivated by the unfolding spectacle. The energy was charged, unpredictable, and raw. The drama that had begun as a subtle undercurrent now surged like a tidal wave, sweeping everyone in its path. The family was left divided, the guests left in disbelief, and the entire night had been transformed from celebration to confrontation. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and no one could predict what would happen next as the room braced for the next explosive twist in the saga. The tension in the room reached an almost unbearable peak as Kirk Frost continued, each word measured, each glance calculated to provoke. Rasheeda's breathing grew quicker, her fingers clenching and unclenching at her sides, while the guests around them watched in stunned silence. Kirk's voice carried over the chatter, firm and unyielding. "You want to act like everything's perfect for the cameras, Rasheeda? Tonight, that act ends. Tonight, the truth steps into the light." The crowd collectively held its breath, sensing that what was unfolding was more than a typical confrontation. It was a spectacle that would be remembered for years. Whispers spread like wildfire as everyone tried to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Some gasped audibly, others shook their heads in disbelief, and a few were already discreetly recording, knowing the drama would explode online within hours. Rasheeda finally spoke, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. "Kirk, I can't believe you're doing this here. This is supposed to be a celebration, not a public battle." Kirk's gaze didn't waver, his smirk faint but unmistakable. "Celebration?" he echoed, letting the word hang heavy in the air. "I call this reality. You've spent too long hiding behind smiles and staged moments. Tonight, everyone sees who you really are." Murmurs of agreement and shock rippled through the crowd. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, unable to look away from the scene unraveling before them. The subtle, calculated intensity of Kirk's words left Rasheeda momentarily speechless, a rare crack in her usually unshakable demeanor. She tried to regain control, stepping closer, voice steady but forceful. "If you have an issue, address it privately. Don't make me look foolish in front of everyone." Kirk tilted his head, almost mockingly, his eyes scanning the crowd as he spoke. Foolish? No. Tonight, you're showing everyone the truth you've hidden for too long. The foolishness has been here all along. The room was silent now except for the faint hum of the music, each guest captivated, some horrified, others secretly thrilled by the raw drama. As the confrontation escalated, Kirk revealed more, pulling up private messages on his phone, letting the screen glow under the dim lights. Look at this, he said, pointing to the text messages and photos displayed, ensuring the audience saw every detail. Whispers turned into audible gasps. Oh my God, one guest whispered, while another muttered, I can't believe this is happening. The private snippets painted a story of hidden tensions, small betrayals, and subtle manipulations that Rasheeda had managed to keep behind closed doors, until now. Rasheeda's composure faltered further, her hands briefly covering her face, then dropping as she squared her shoulders. Kirk, you've gone too far, she said, her voice shaking but defiant. Kirk leaned in closer, speaking softly yet audibly enough for the surrounding crowd to hear. Too far? No, Rasheeda. This is just right. The timing is perfect. Everyone here deserves to see the truth. You can't hide behind your image anymore. The tension was palpable. The room felt like a powder keg, ready to ignite at the slightest spark. Guests murmured anxiously, some debating whether to step in, others paralyzed by the unfolding spectacle. A mutual friend finally stepped forward, voice strained with urgency. Kirk, this is getting out of hand. Please stop. Kirk paused, letting a faint smirk spread across his face. Stop? He asked, the word dripping with controlled intensity. No, this ends tonight, and it ends with everyone knowing everything. No more secrets. The crowd collectively recoiled. Family members glanced at one another nervously, some trying to offer silent support to Rasheeda, others simply watching, unable to process the storm that had overtaken what was supposed to be a celebration. Rasheeda, now visibly shaken but unwilling to cower, tried to reclaim some power in the situation. If you continue, you'll regret it, she warned, voice firm. I won't let you make me the villain in this room. Kirk shook his head slowly, leaning back just enough to make his point clear. Villain? He said, almost mockingly. The only villain is the one hiding behind smiles and staged moments. Tonight, everyone sees the real Rasheeda. The air was thick with shock. Guests exchanged glances, some quietly nodding in agreement, others silently recoiling at the public intensity. The family's unity seemed fractured, divided by the sudden eruption of raw, unfiltered confrontation. Suddenly, Kirk's tone shifted slightly, leaning in to deliver another layer of drama. And don't think you can deflect or charm your way out, he said, voice low but cutting. The truth doesn't lie. The truth doesn't negotiate. The truth exposes everything. A hush fell over the room. Even the most composed guests seemed caught in the gravity of his words. Whispers floated, fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the air seemed almost suffocating as everyone absorbed the weight of the confrontation. Rasheeda's eyes glistened with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. This isn't about truth, Kirk. This is personal, she said, her voice trembling. Kirk's gaze remained unwavering, his presence commanding the space around him. Personal? He replied, voice calm yet piercing. No, Rasheeda. This is necessary. Tonight, the curtain lifts. Everyone sees what's been hidden behind the smiles, the staged posts, the rehearsed appearances. This is reality, unfiltered, raw, undeniable. The crowd murmured in reaction. Some were horrified, some fascinated, and others quietly recording, sensing that every word, every expression, every subtle movement would become viral content by morning. The family was visibly divided, some shielding their eyes, others leaning in, unable to resist the magnetic tension that had overtaken the room. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and no one could escape the intensity of the confrontation unfolding at what was meant to be a glamorous celebration. Kirk Frost had seized control of the night, and it was clear that this spectacle would not conclude quietly, leaving everyone wondering what would come next. The party had transformed completely. What was meant to be an evening of celebration now felt like the center of a reality TV storm, and Kirk Frost was clearly the eye of it. Every eye in the room was glued to him and Rasheeda, their tension palpable, radiating through the crowd. The music had faded into the background, replaced by the low hum of whispers, gasps, and the occasional sharp intake of breath. Guests shuffled, some trying to find an exit, others unable to tear themselves away. It was chaos wrapped in elegance, the kind of scene people would replay in their minds for months. Rasheeda, usually the picture of composure, was visibly shaken, though she refused to show it fully. She straightened her posture, shoulders back, chin high, trying to regain a sense of control. "Kirk, I said stop," she repeated, her voice steady but firm, trying to cut through the crowd's murmuring. Kirk's eyes locked onto hers, a faint smirk crossing his lips. "Stop?" he echoed, his voice carrying just enough to make everyone hear. "No, Rasheeda, we're just getting started. The truth waits for no one." He took a deliberate step closer, and the space between them seemed charged with electricity. The guests around them instinctively shifted, creating a wider circle as if giving them the stage. Some whispered under their breath, speculating on what had fueled this public confrontation. Had it been months of simmering tension? A betrayal? Or was this a calculated spectacle orchestrated for maximum impact? Whatever the reason, the energy in the room was undeniable. "You think everyone loves the picture you paint," Kirk said, his voice low but sharp, "but they see the cracks. They see the rehearsed smiles, the hidden comments, the half-truths. Tonight, all that ends. Tonight, everyone knows." Murmurs rose, fans are shocked, emotions ran high, the family left divided. Rasheeda's eyes flickered with hurt and anger, but she steadied herself, refusing to be entirely rattled. "You're turning this into a spectacle," she shot back. "This is humiliating." Kirk tilted his head, almost mockingly. Humiliation? Or revelation? The line is thin, Rasheeda, and tonight, we cross it. As the tension escalated, Kirk produced a small notebook from his pocket, flipping it open to reveal scribbled notes, names, dates, and accusations. "I've been keeping track," he said, letting the details spill into the open. "Everything you've done, every story you've tried to control, every slight you thought was hidden. It's all here. Tonight, it comes out." The crowd gasped audibly. Some guests instinctively reached for their phones, recording every word, knowing this confrontation would trend across social media instantly. Rasheeda's friends tried to intervene, whispering urgently, "Kirk, this is too much. You're going too far." Kirk's response was a calm shake of the head, a faint smirk, and a pointed look at the onlookers. "Too far? No. It's exactly right. The timing, the place, the audience. Perfect. Everyone here deserves to see the reality." Whispers turned to audible gasps, some guests murmuring, "He's exposing her publicly? And this is insane. I can't believe it." The family members were visibly tense, some frowning in disbelief, others quietly nodding in agreement with the blunt honesty of Kirk's delivery. Rasheeda, now visibly rattled but unwilling to appear defeated, took a step forward, her voice rising slightly. "Kirk, you're making this personal. It's cruel." Kirk didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in, lowering his voice but ensuring it carried across the circle. "Personal?" he repeated. "No. This is essential. The truth never hides. The truth doesn't negotiate. The truth exposes, whether it's comfortable or not." The weight of his words hung over the crowd, drawing every gaze, every attention, every whispered speculation. Then, the drama reached a new level. Kirk's gaze swept the room, and he gestured subtly, letting the lights catch a series of phones already recording. "Look around," he said, letting the phrase linger. "Everyone here is a witness. Everyone will remember. Everyone will see. No one gets to look away." The murmurs escalated, some people nodding subtly, others whispering in disbelief. The power dynamics in the room had shifted completely. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the night had transformed from a casual celebration to a high-stakes spectacle of confrontation and revelation. Rasheeda's hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it, her eyes darting to friends for support. Kirk, this isn't about revealing anything, she said, trying to regain composure. This is about control. You're trying to make me look weak. Kirk shook his head slowly, almost pityingly. Weak? No. Strong, exposed, real. Tonight, the world sees the difference between the mask and the person underneath. You've worn it too long. The words landed hard, sending ripples of shock through the assembled guests. The family glanced at each other nervously, some silently supporting Rasheeda, others watching the raw honesty in Kirk's delivery. And just when it seemed the room couldn't absorb any more tension, Kirk's voice cut through the murmur again. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. And don't think this is the end. This night? It's just the beginning. Everyone here, every fan, every friend, every critic, they'll remember this night. They'll remember Rasheeda, not as she wants them to, but as she is. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable. The crowd collectively shivered. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, the family was left divided, and the room understood that the party, the celebration, the glitz, it had all been eclipsed by the storm that Kirk had unleashed. The night had changed forever, and there was no turning back. The atmosphere in the room had shifted completely. What began as a celebration had become a charged battleground, each guest acutely aware of the storm unfolding before them. Kirk Frost, now fully in control of the moment, moved slowly around the room, letting his presence dominate the space. Every glance he cast at Rasheeda was measured, deliberate, each one a reminder that the confrontation was far from over. Whispers spread like wildfire, and fans are shocked as phones captured every moment, already imagining the viral clips that would lead, but with piercing clarity. This is exactly who I am. And this is exactly who you are too. You've spent too long hiding, pretending, controlling what people see. Tonight, that facade comes down. The crowd murmured, the words reverberating through the room. Some nodded in quiet agreement, while others simply stared, caught between shock and disbelief. The family was visibly shaken, some exchanging nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. The guests felt like witnesses to a live exposé, each moment more intense than the last. The air was thick with anticipation, tension, and the electric charge of unresolved conflict. Kirk's next move intensified the drama. He pulled out a folder, flipping it open to reveal a series of photos, social media screenshots, and notes, each one carefully curated to make a point. Look at this, he said, letting the light from the phones illuminate the content. Everything hidden, everything you thought nobody knew, is out. Calm yet loaded.